Intelligent Systems has turned Arena upside down. Let's make sense of all the recent changes and do a deep dive on how this mode works. We're gonna hit which units to pick, what to do with bonus heroes, how to build a team, and how to select duos and legendaries. This was a bombshell of a change that IS just laid on us. This is showing a cycle without a bonus legendary, and understand that's not going to be the most common case. Bonus legendaries are gonna show up now 2 of the 3 months that you have them in. So first up, we have new or special heroes. Always fantastic if you've got them. New Grail units, which they've been very good about giving us lately. Then we have a sequential GHB if there's not a new one in the Grail unit. This does go in release order. We have random stuff, which is refines, 4 stars, or really whatever IS feels like doing. And of course, we have our sequential legendary if there isn't a new one. That will mostly be in season, so keep that in mind. So when we're looking at that bonus legendary, most of the time they'll be in the top left. And again, that change means they will be here for 4 weeks. I have 2 suggested paths here. Most of the time when you summon a new unit, they still aren't going to score as good as the legendary or as the Grail unit, unless you really get a merge on them. So let's move into talking about GHBs and legendaries as bonus units. First up, I want to look at our latest GHBs, and I have told you guys that they have been fairly generous with us. Just know that if you drop below 716, you're going to need to compensate in some other way by giving them better fodder or by making up for it with the rest of your core. Here is the big change, and that is taking the bonus legendary. And when you have that unit on your team, you no longer have to fish, and you get the max score. That is huge. I cannot tell you enough how huge this is. Look at these 2 teams here, because before this change, these teams scored exactly the same. So you take this legendary Celceta team and you now don't have to fish. So you get ceiling every time at 768. Whereas when you're talking about the Mathis team, you are going to get a 764 if you spend about 8 crests a week. If you're wondering how I'm getting that number, there was a user who actually did 150 samples and then got a stat spread on those. Now, that isn't enough to be definitive, but it is enough to give us a pretty good idea. Just understand that is a 50th percentile number, and it could be greater or less than that. But about 8 crests is what you're looking at. So, you're seeing this. The one up top, the legendary Celceta team, is enough to get into tier 21. The one down below is not. Now, most legendaries, you just need a one-off, but understand that popular ones like legendary Dimitri or legendary Byleth are going to need a +1. That means extra units that you have to summon. So this really rewards collectors and early adopters. These are the max rewards you're seeing for Arena, and we're going to talk about what commitment level gets you what level of these rewards. Let's talk about the absolute easiest way to get into Arena. That's right, we're gonna talk about auto-battling your way through. You can see my auto-battle core going over to the left here, and summoners, I am so proud of this thing. I worked really hard on this, and I wanted to be able to share that so that people could go and easily get a lot of these rewards. And if you look at the percentages, it's very high. You can get most of the rewards out of this system just by doing auto battle once a day, or even once a week. The big thing you're not getting is crowns, but who needs that empty bragging right anyway? Definitely not me, definitely not. But let's talk about a team selection here. And the biggest thing you want to do is minimize your score while maximizing your survivability. So we're not going to pay attention to how well a unit can destroy things. That's not the point. In fact, we want to take off all seals altogether to make sure we drive down that score as low as possible. Just make sure you're not skimping on skills. You don't get enough of a benefit to go, for instance, without an A skill here and take like attack defense unity off of Dimitri. He really wants that, and it helps him a ton. Make sure you're picking units though without hard counters, and there are exceptions. This Edelgard, for instance, is susceptible to armor effective weapons, but she's just so powerful she doesn't care. Same thing with Cam. With Cam, you're susceptible to bows, but again, Vantage kind of trumps that. So look for Vantage, look for high survivability, look for flat damage reduction, all of that great stuff. In other words, if you just picked CYL3 units, you'd be fine. The thing you really want to remember here is that the way the algorithm works is it's trying to match you up with a team of similar score. It's going to be important for later on. So I said it before, but low score, high survivability. Okay, we're moving on to the next level, and in order to do that, we need to talk about Scorebots. So I've got our latest Scorebot up here in Lumera, and she's actually the reason this whole thing started, because I started researching how effective she was in Arena and realized there wasn't a real good guide as to how you do a lot of things in this mode, especially with the new changes. It is very important to know how I do this though, and the first step is simming this unit versus every legendary. Those are just the units you're going to see the absolute most, along with the most common duos. Right now, the two most common are Chrom and Ninjorin. Those are the two you're going to see all the time. First up, you're going to try your enemy phase build. Understand that this is the harder of these three to build, and it is going to expire quicker than all of the others as well. The fact of the matter is, the recent legendaries, and even duos for that matter, have been incredible nukes that just smash things. You're seeing up here, you can see with the wins, this unit only wins 25 of them, and that's not fantastic. But those can be key wins. This is a very important unit for your team that you can't just skip. If you can bait a unit on the enemy team, that's essentially knocking down one of theirs, and so it's a 4-on-3. It makes it much easier to do your player phase strategies, which brings us to the player phase build for these. And this will go to pretty much any player phase unit right now. This is it. Attack speed finish, close call 4, joint drive speed, believe it or not, because you need to milk every last bit of speed out of these units currently coming out. You'll notice the wins are much better on this because player phase is just flat out easier. You only have to worry about 2 stats, attack and speed. Enemy phase, you have to worry about, well, really 5. You have to worry about HP, attack speed, and defense res. Summoners, it is just easier to build a player phase unit. What you want to do is pick your enemy phase unit that can transition into player phase, and then they last longer. The last thing I want to talk about is this budget build. You'll notice the wins do not drop down that much lower. Like, you're literally 2 wins short. And you're always going to look for that point of diminishing returns. Obviously, this unit doesn't score as well as the other two, but depending on your team, that might not matter. So it's something to look into. And yeah, don't spend more than you have to on these Scorebots unless they're your favorite, and then just go bananas. We want to talk about individual sims here and just take a look at this. And let's cut right to the chase. In the enemy phase, Lumera doesn't beat a single one of the new legendaries from this last year. That's going to be common though. The legendaries in general are higher up on the power curve than the other units we have, and we already talked about enemy phase being harder. The thing that this unit does do is this unit beats Ninja Korin, which is fantastic because you're going to see that unit all the time. That is a feather in this unit's cap. You are going to see duos more than you see legendaries because legendary cores change weekly or monthly, whereas folks are going to use their duos in every single week they can. For looking at who the next big duo is going to be, always pay attention to A Hero Rises. That is a pretty good idea as to what you're going to be seeing in the future. Now, we talked about not winning against legendaries. That's something you see here. You get a lot of the ties, which keep in mind is not bad. If you can stalemate a unit, then you can get them into position while your other units pounce on them. So that is obviously a good thing. Also note that no one beats this Chrom version. This build here is absolutely incredible. You're gonna get units like that are just very difficult to defeat. You just have to chalk them up to a loss and move along. The next thing up is player phase, and I mean, look at this. I've told you guys this is easier, and I mean, yeah, this is a lot of wins, and the things that do beat this unit are weird, like Faye. I guess not beat, but tie. Still, These are very, very good results. Lumera is a very good player phase unit, and luckily IS has been generous with their GHBs as of late. We've been getting things like this. Understand when you're doing these sims, I have an Omni +6 on either side, just because visible buffs are so easy to get because you're almost driven into rallies until they give us something else. Next up, I want to look at the budget build here, and just know that lulls are incredibly good in this mode. It is really interesting to note that this unit beats Dimitri. I did not expect that, but hey, Lumera is very good, just doesn't beat Hector. That one shocked me. But look at how much fewer wins this unit gets. It's not much of a drop. If you can do this with your team score, I would highly suggest this. You can get every one of these pieces of fodder off of codes. The last thing I want to look at is Hans, and understand that flat out this unit does better in the enemy phase than Lumera does. But for enemy phase units, you really want to be close to other units, and having a solo condition is difficult. Just ask the Yenfei players who have been suffering through that for quite a while. So, sometimes we take convenience at the cost of a few kills. The other thing to notice is the type of wins that Lumera is getting over Hans. In particular, that Corrin win is huge. Because you're going to be seeing this unit so much, being able to bait them out is a big, big deal. I will say that Hans does manage to beat Shez, which is one of the newer legendaries, which is fantastic. Personally, I would still take Lumera, but they are still very good units. I think they are a 1A and 1B of Scorebots, and you're going to pair them with a certain color. For instance, if you have duochrome on your team, you're going to pick Hans. If you had, say, Asker, if you had duo Asker, you would probably pick Lumera or either one. Just know that whatever unit you're having trouble with, your Scorebot goes in and fills that role. I want to quickly go over just the 760 Scorebot tier list here, and understand, always build your favorites. I will never tell you not to. But if you're just picking a Scorebot, pick as high as you possibly can and try to pick a unit with a preference weapon. They score better for one, but usually they have more effects, and understand that they're going to get a good refine as well. Or at least a mediocre refine. Anyway, just keep in mind things like Cervantes being in armor. Don't pick Cervantes. I imagine we'll get another blue Scorebot eventually, but having an armor in Arena right now is absolute suffering because the legendaries are so mobile, it's ridiculous. There are also things like Mordecai, who is better on a full beast team, but if you don't have that, it's very hard to do, that's why he ranks so low in this. Also, he doesn't sim quite as well as the others, but versus melee threats, he can be very, very potent. So tier 20.5 is a term used to mean you promote every other week into tier 21, and you drop down once you're in on that next week. So you only play every other week, and you auto battle the next week. It takes the commitment level a lot further down, and it's a lot easier to get. Plus, you get the majority of the rewards. The thing to remember here is, if you are building towards a tier 21 team, the things that I'm telling you here are an excellent start to get you going on that path. So understand that resources won't be wasted if you go tier 20.5 first and then move into tier 21. But let's talk about what's been going on in Arena. And the first big thing is the threshold change. Now, once they did that, they essentially allowed more folks into the upper tiers, and the percentile that got into tier 21 increased, so the score you needed to fish for dropped. It was an excellent change. Then they brought tickets along, and things were fantastic, and people rejoiced, and there was a lot of excitement about this mode because you got free 5 stars out of it, which is still an excellent change, and I like it a lot. I am less excited about this bonus unit change, and essentially you can see what it's done is it's taken the thresholds right back up to where they were even before the threshold change. It's not excellent. Now, this is still doable as a free-to-play player if we're talking tier 20.5. We'll talk about tier 21 here in a bit, but let's go over the options for team construction. Here you have it, the most free-to-play team I could possibly put together. I mean, this is the GHB bonus, this is 2 GHB Scorebots, and a dancer from the 3 to 4 star pool. Please take this with you no matter what. Get a dancer in Arena. It changes the mode, it makes things so much more enjoyable, and it makes it less punishing. The play is more creative, and in general, it's just a good thing. I don't care about the score hit, just do it. So, the thing you should be looking at this thing and asking yourself is, how much does this cost? And can I win with this team? Let's talk about the cost here right now. 528 orbs a year. That is just under 2 months worth of orb income, and that sounds too good to be true. Now, you're gonna need some things, and I included fodder in this plan because you're summoning so little, as in none. So you're gonna need extra things like a tier 4 B skill or 3, and you're going to need G-Dual Flyer for your racing. These are things that you're going to need to replace almost every year, although I will say the racing thing, well, you won't need to replace racing every year, but there's normally some sort of random fodder that you need to get. It's important to note that Scorebots do need to be replaced every year. They just don't hold up, and we'll show you a little bit about that with gameplay in just a second. But what you should be asking yourself now is, can you win with this team? Would you like the short answer? No. Okay, in order to do this episode properly, I actually made teams representing each of the plans I had laid out because I wanted to make sure that you could still play with them and win. And there are so many hard counters to this team. You're seeing Brave Dimitri here, who just absolutely demolished me every time I saw him. And he's a very common unit. Even Fallen Edelgard against this team is not nothing. I can see why folks at the lower levels still fear this unit because honestly, she can be a real pain. For those of you who are using this type of team, bless you. You are absolute warriors. What I will say is, there are better ways to play Arena even if they are a bit more expensive. It is fantastic to know that score-wise, you can still do it. I just wouldn't want to go into battle with this team. So how do we make this better? And the answer is duo units. You notice I'm still not using legendaries at all, and we're having a score good enough to get into tier 21, even if it is only every other week. I can't tell you enough how amazing this mode is with a duo. It is completely different and so much more fun. We talked about encouraging creative play, and this does it. There are some absolutely bonkers things you can do with Change Fate where you take impossible situations and turn them around. We're still using Scorebots, we're still using GHBs, we're still using Race It. This team has 2 refreshers, which is phenomenal and makes things a lot easier. But these duo heroes, these are your 6-star heroes. They essentially have another skill slot in this duo skill that can help your entire team. It's also worth noting that you're not going to just use this unit in Arena. Duo Chrom, for instance, can be used in almost every game mode. I have him, and I have more fodder on him than a new hero's banner. He is phenomenal, and I absolutely love using him. So know that whoever you summon, you're looking at an investment for all modes, not just this one. So you picked your duo, you picked your Scorebot that complements them, and you're good to go. But how much does this cost? Here we are. So, 1,070 orbs a year. This is about 30% of your orb income. And honestly, this isn't bad. I still have the tier 4 fodder because you're not summoning enough to get that on your own just yet, like you will with the tier 21 plans. But obviously we'll need the G-Dual Flying for Racing and 1,600 orbs for Chrom. Just know that these duos don't have to be replaced for 2 years if you pick the right one. Chrom has been amazing, still going strong, and I expect he'll be going strong until next year. The greatest thing about this is it leaves room for other things, like if you're summoning for favorites, or if you want to progress your Aether Raids account. Like, you can still do that. You can still get Mythics or the latest Sharena alt. But I want to look at some gameplay and talk about how this team plays. I know it doesn't look like it, but this is a fairly challenging team to go up against. Leaf got a good refine despite what folks say, and Nurin Zeal is very potent in this mode. Legendary Chrom has to change fate, which is amazing and can be tough to deal with when he refreshes and somehow jettisons himself all the way across the map. So being able to go up against this and essentially take this team out in almost one turn is very satisfying and a lot of fun. If you're wondering how I come up with these comps, I went in and talked to the Discord about what units would be comparable to the team I just showed. So is Peony better than Racing? Definitely, but I think this team on a whole is a team that is comparable in power, especially when I'm using Hana, which it hurt my soul how far she's fallen. I loved that unit so much when she came out. So the big takeaway here is get a duo unit. They will make your experience so much easier and you will be able to use them across all modes. But it's time to talk about Tier 21. We've talked about the value plays. Tier 21 is all about the crowns, the glory, the knowledge that your research management was good enough to beat this whale mode than it is. And the rules have completely changed. You're going to need to recalibrate how this mode works at the high levels. But if you like the content, I'd love if you'd support with a super chat, a comment, or even just a like. They help the channel a ton, and they help me know what stuff you guys like to see and what you want to see more of. These take a ton of effort, and you can help me do more content like this. But enough of that. The Tier 21 threshold, the thing you've all been waiting to see, the thing that skyrocketed to a level past what we've ever seen before. So you see a lot of the same things, threshold change happens, things get easier. Tickets happen, things get even easier. Bonus change happens. It affected Tier 20.5 a bit. It really impacted Tier 21, and you can see this is the highest threshold we have ever had. It was nuts. Now you guys are gonna have to allow me a little bit of projection because this Dimitri week was probably the worst case we will ever see. This was a unit on a Hero Rises, on a Hero Fest, and he's very popular because, you know, he's amazing. But Summoners, this was the perfect storm and the stupidest thing IS could possibly give us for the first bonus unit back. It blew everyone out of the water. Summoners, you could not get into Tier 21 without a Dimitri, or at least it was very, very difficult. What I'm projecting here for the normal week is 766 per match. I think that's going to be about right, but if this is wrong, Summoners, you can come back and just give me a hard time about it. But understand, there are always going to be weeks like this. They are just going to be few and far between because most of the time we'll be using the new legendaries. Again, that's 2 out of every 3 months now. The big question you should be asking yourself though is it possible to do this without a legendary? Let's find out. Here it is, the classic way to build your arena core. We've got your legendary, we've got 2 duos. That's right, I couldn't use 2 legendaries because they had to be new, brand new. As in, it is better to have Duma up there than almost any other water legendary not named Ninian. And Ninian is the highest scoring legendary in the game right now. At the rate it would take you to replace legendaries, it is just more cost effective and honestly better for your account if you just pick the latest duo. And then we have our bonus GHB Scorebot, which, given this is a unit that was very good and you're going to need a good bonus unit in order to do this. We'll talk more on that. I think the first thing we need to talk about though is cost. 3,000 orbs. a year. That is nuts. That leaves a mere 2 months worth of orb income for you to do other things with. Can we even call this free to play? You are going to have to replace your arena core about every 3 years in regards to legendaries, which is nuts. There are some exceptions, for instance, Legendary Chrom, because of To Change Fate, scores like a 3-year-old legendary instead of like a 4-year-old one. But still, his time is limited, and that's an expensive unit to get. So that's 4,135 orbs replaced every 3 years. And then you have 2 duos, which each have to be replaced every 2 years. 3,250 orbs. That's where we get our grand total when amortized across the time of 3,000 orbs per year. Oh, summoners, that is nightmarish. And that isn't even guaranteeing anything because you're not going to get a bonus unit as good as Lumera every week. Still, let's talk about how the gameplay goes. So I didn't quite have 2 duos that scored as well as what I'm showing here. What I did was replace with Dogger, who is an amazing arena unit, even if she doesn't score just absolutely amazingly right now because, you know, IS is stupid. They don't like you to take mythics into arena. Still, this is a very difficult team you're looking at with Ninian as a dancer, Lumera fully decked out, you have Chrom, who's always just a nightmare, and you have Dimitri. And this team is going to handle them very easily. In fact, I didn't lose a match with this team that wasn't because I did something stupid. But that's a good feeling. You want to be able to go into modes knowing that you are going to at least have a chance to win. This team makes sure that you don't ever experience that. It just comes at a huge cost, and ultimately this is more of a tier 20.75 solution. All right, here it is. It is time to realign the way we think about how we're supposed to do arena. This is what IS is pushing us towards. This is a different type of team. You're going to keep your duo. You are going to keep your Scorebots that we just had. You are going to ditch every single merge project you have on a legendary because honestly, they don't cut it. Seriously. I mean, if you have to replace them every 3 years just for them to be viable, no. I know this hurts, and I know a lot of you have been building towards teams that use 2 legendary cores. It's just not something that is viable right now. There could be an additional change in the future, but I think this is the new reality. They want you to be summoning on the latest legendary, and I do have to say that most of the new legendaries are very fun. The other thing to really look at is, as far as merge projects go, this game really favors duos. So this team maintains tier 21 most weeks. The exception are going to be weeks, like we said with Dimitri, where you have to have a +1. So what does this cost? Here we go. It costs 63% of your orb income to do this plan. That does not include the upfront cost of the 3,000 orbs it takes to get every single old legendary. Now this cost is going to vary wildly depending on what you have in your barracks and what ends up on remix banners and who shares colors. This 3K orbs is a very round number, just understand that. But with remix banners having sparks, this is really a lot easier than you think it is. Have I convinced you on duo units yet? If not, please just trust me. Make a unit like Chrom a core unit in everything you do. The last thing, and this is the really difficult sell. This is the 8 legendaries a year. That is a huge cost, and the bulk of this, 1,500 orbs for that. That is nuts. Also, these units get good refines for the most part, so you're going to see some return on your investment. This is just a different way of looking at things, and it's been progressing for quite some time, where IS would prefer you to summon 1 or 2 of the latest units as opposed to getting actual merge projects. I don't understand it. It completely boggles my mind. So we're going to depart from the free-to-play path just a bit here and talk about FEH. And I've got to tell you, this rewards FEH users a lot. Understand that that limits what you're going to get from these units. There is a cap on that, basically 165 orbs, that once you spend it, you will get the legendary you want. That's huge. That's essentially taking the nice distribution bell curve, chopping it in half, and saying that you will always be on the left. I can't tell you how good that is, because sometimes you're going to get the ones where you get your legendary unit right off the bat. You're going to call it quits. FEH is amazing for this plan. But for you diehards, you still have 2,269 orbs per year. Whew. So it can be done. It is expensive, and it is becoming harder and harder to be a free-to-play player in this game. Let's go ahead and take a look at some gameplay though. So I'm not gonna lie, once you reach this point, Arena actually gets to be a lot of fun. The difficulty goes down the higher up in level you get. And one of the major reasons is you're going to see the exact same units every time. I see almost the exact same teams. What you're seeing here is a bit of a departure from that, and I wanted to show that because, I mean, how cool is that Alfred there? But summoners, using the bonus legendary just makes this an absolute blast, and they really do well versus most things, especially with the bonus stats. Just think of legendary Veronica season and how much fun all the folks who were using her had. The other thing is, before, if you had legendary Veronica, there were a lot of times where she didn't score high enough for you to actually make it maintain tier 21 without getting her at a +1. That changes now. There are some good things that come out of this. If you have your favorite legendary whose bonus season pops up, it means you don't have to fish. It isn't all bad, but for the folks at the very top, and that probably equates to around 2,000 players, this is a really tough pill to swallow. If you love Arena, I really believe this is the path forward, but let's get into just a few tier lists and talk about some investments. And the first is legendaries. And I know I just said that these are not the units you want to be +10ing, but there are a lot of folks that want to go that route. And understand, if you're looking at the team that I just showed you, if you already have a core, it definitely makes it easier to maintain. So if you're an absolute legendary nut, make sure you're focusing on these meta units. They're the ones that are going to give you a lot of impact. Next, looking at tier 1, these are still good units, but they influence your game less in other modes, whereas that meta-defining phase, you can use those units anywhere. You get into tier 2, and these units start to show their age, not in skill. These are still very good units, but they don't score as high as you'd like them to. You're getting into the point where these are starting to fall off, and you're not going to get as much use out of these. When we're talking about remix units, I don't believe they are good investments at this time. If they're your favorites, please go grab them, have fun with them. They're fantastic units. Legendary Elowood, for instance, is meta in so many modes. But as far as Arena scoring goes, they are not going to help you there. So that's where onesie twosies help you more than the +10s. The last thing I want to talk about is duo Scorebots. And there are a lot of different things you can do with these unless you're going the tier 21 GHB plan. In that case, you need 764 and up, or the highest scoring duo you can possibly get. For everyone else, these are units that you're going to want to be using in every mode you have. So you're going to want to take a lot of time and really dive into these. It's okay if you don't +10 these until they're rerun. Trust me. You don't need to +10 them right away. Look at Crom. Even if you waited till his rerun, he still has a 1.5 year life after that, which is excellent. The one exception score-wise that I'm making here is Duo Thor, and she is just so influential in every single mode that I would make an exception for her if you wanted to take a score hit and grab her. That is not to say the units in Tier 2 or 3 are bad. I absolutely love some of these Tier 2 units. There are a lot of folks who are still using Ninjorin to great success. Duo Dogger is one of my favorite units and is an absolute boss in a lot of different ways. We go down to Tier 3 and understand what these generally are units that they were Scorebots and they kind of scored out. The thing you can do with these is instead of having a GHB Scorebot, these units move into that slot. So you end up, as you progress, you have the older duo and then you have the newer duo. And for most of these plans, that's still good enough to maintain Tier 21. And it also, with 2 duo skills, makes things incredibly easy. Just remember that these are all excellent units. Pick one that matches your playstyle and have fun, because these are going to be part of your core to your barracks. Summoners, if you're interested in more guides, please check out my Gale Force video. I had a blast making it, and it's in the same vein. Take care and schedule an appointment with your FEHologist real soon.